Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 518. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Whalen, drnorge, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim. I can't believe we've been doing this 12 years, so says the sensei of the whatnot, Segulin, the Duke of You-Know, and the elder statesman of the podcast.
How's it going, eh?
Jim, we're back, and it's been a crazy couple of months. I'm very happy to say that we're back and feeling great. So it's nice to be back on the show. We are going to be talking this episode about a whole bunch of stuff, actually. We kind of go speeding bullet style on quite a few things when we go to DC Media. We're going to be talking about the recent film Professor Marston and the Wonder Women. We're going to be talking about Krypton, Lego Flash, Gotham by Gaslight, Justice League Dark, Teen Titans The Judas Contract. We also go more in depth to talk about the recent events in the Aquaman comic. We're going to be going spoilery about Mera, the Queen of Atlantis, #1, and Aquaman #34 in a very packed episode. We are proud members of the Comics Podcast Network, the League of Comic Book Podcasts, and the InfiniteComics.com podcast partnership. Mr. Segulin, this episode we are sponsored, as always, by DCB Service and InStockTrades.com. What is going on over at DCBService.com?
Well, they always have their wonderful bundles, 50% off bundles. They've got a 45% off bundle on varying covers. But not only do they have some cool bundles, they've got some great collected, including the Wonder Woman Conan hardcover edition, written by Gail Simone, art by Aaron Lopresti. Also 50% off, only $12.49 for this wonderful story. Thank you, DCBS.
Over at InStockTrades.com, I am geeking out. They've released Jack Kirby, the Fourth World Omnibus. I didn't know about this thing. This is, instead of them being separate volumes, this is one big tome. 1,536 pages. It contains Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen 133 to 139 and 141 to 148, New Gods 1 to 11, Forever People 1 to 11, Mr. Miracle 1 through 18, DC graphic novel number 4, The Hunger Dogs, and a story from New Gods number 6 from 1984. It's everything in one, and it's $150 regularly, 42% off, only $87. For 1,536 pages of Jack Kirby goodness. I do not own this. I'm going to own this. So this isn't a matter of this is on my radar. This is a must-have. So thank you, InStockTrades.com, for pointing out that I somehow missed this gem, because I'm going to own this. Jim, speaking of DCB Service and InStockTrades.com, I also want to shout out a comic book project that's near and dear to our hearts. This is the Kickstarter for Staunch Ambition, issue number 3. As mankind continues to advance in scientific knowledge, breakthroughs compound exponentially. What happens when mankind is able to transcend their physical limitations? The natural becomes the supernatural. Welcome to the New Enlightenment. If you joined us for episode 491, we were joined by creator Brian Lau to discuss issues 0 and 1 of this wonderful gem, and we go spoilery on it. So if you haven't been exposed to Staunch Ambition, go ahead, pick up those issues now. They're available on Comixology. You can read along and hear some of our thoughts with the creator as we talk about in depth about those issues. We have an episode coming up next week. We just recorded it. Issue number 2, we're going to be talking in depth about that with Brian Lau. So this is a series we're going to be following. This Kickstarter is for issue number 3. If you don't have any of those issues, there are many levels that are very inexpensive that allow you to get the digital books, including the song. There's a special song score that's been created for this. Many ways to get physical signed copies and all kinds of other swag and gems. Go check out the Kickstarter. There will be links in the show notes for Staunch Ambition, issue number 3. Please support. Brian is a fan of the show and a friend of the show. Please make sure to support Brian and his work. This is a great book, and we'll actually tell you next week a lot more why we're enjoying it. So this is one we're going to keep following all along. Mr. Segulin, what kind of a podcast are we?
Well, Raging Bullets is a spoiler podcast. We go in-depth into plotline, story twists, and whatnot of the comics we're discussing on today's show, as well as the movies and TV shows and all the other various wonderful media we're discussing. So if you haven't read the books or seen the shows, you may want to come back later so you can better enjoy the show.
After a long wait, Let's talk some pop culture.
He is called Hawkman. His gauntlets possess awesome powers.
This has been a heck of a couple weeks for me for watching DC and media, just because I've been kind of laid up and sick, and then I had my heart surgery beforehand and stuff like that. Well, I had a stent put in. I don't know if that counts as heart surgery, but certainly not fun. It's been great to catch up on things, though. You know what I watched today? I finished watching this today, actually. Professor Marston and the Wonder Woman. Have you heard about this?
No.
So it's a film. It's based on a true story, because I've seen some documentaries recently. It was an extra on something. They had a documentary about the life of Professor Marston. And I don't know how familiar you are with his life, but he was married and then fell in love with one of his students. But it wasn't just him who fell in love with the student, it was his wife as well. And the two of them, the two women, are credited for being major players and inspirations for the character of Wonder Woman combined, their personality traits. And his wife was a famous researcher as well. So this whole alternative lifestyle of theirs came from a lot of his research into the lie detector and to some of his philosophies on life altogether. Because of the fact that of their relationship, they couldn't continue doing research in a traditional manner. And it led to, him trying to write some successful research books and things like that eventually led him to the world of comics based on the success of Superman and Batman. So Wonder Woman became this alternative character. Well, this movie is pretty close to the documentary that I've seen. And I got to admit, I'm not very well read on Marston, but I'm much more interested in the guy's life now in a way that I haven't been previously, thanks to seeing the documentary that I saw before and now this movie. That I guess the movie's been in the works for like 8 years. The director also is the person who wrote the film. So it was interesting to see this come to fruition. And the extras are kind of interesting because the actors in play talk about how Luke Evans played William Moulton Marston, and talked about what it was like to bring these characters to life and what drew them to the roles, and what it was like to work with this director who wrote the screenplay for this. It was a really good movie. For anyone who's a Wonder Woman fan that would like to know kind of the equally interesting backstory of the people that created Wonder Woman, in a time where, this Wonder Woman came on the scene at a time where having a female lead character that was successful in a comic book medium, or even in any media, was not something that was known. And she took the world by storm. But it also talks about the fact that, it was, Wonder Woman at the time was bondage heavy and stuff like that, and where that came from with Marston and what he was trying to do with the character, and how there were a lot of elements of women empowerment based on his philosophies, but were often misinterpreted by the public. So it was a very interesting story into the mind of this man, especially if you're reading the Golden Age stuff right now, to kind of understand, where did this come from? What was the thinking behind this? That movie and the documentary I saw have made me far more interested in the Golden Age stuff, because the Golden Age Wonder Woman stuff is, I don't want to say a lot different than the modern day stuff, but there's certainly more elements of what it was like for females at that time than what it's like today. So it's not a modern read by any stretch. And certainly there's elements of some of Marston and his family's interests laden throughout this book. It does make it far more interesting to read them and kind of see, okay, this is where this was coming from. Whether you agree with it or not, it just makes it far more interesting, I think, to read the Golden Age stuff when you know the backstory of it. And so I really enjoyed it. But it's Professor Marston and the Wonder Women. I don't know when it was released into theaters and stuff like that, or if it was, because I completely missed this. So I'm guessing it was released in maybe smaller movie theaters, being more of an artsy film or something like that. Or maybe it was a direct-to release. I don't know. But I really enjoyed it. So it's one that I think might have fallen under some people's radars. So I figured I would shout it out in this one just because it was an unexpected release for me. And I ended up grabbing it on iTunes. It was, things will pop up that are suggestions for you. This was one that popped up as a suggestion because obviously the sheer amount of comic book stuff that I've been, that I own. But I like that. I would have missed it. I did not know this was a thing.
I'd heard of it vaguely, but I never read it or never watched it or rented it or any of that stuff. I never even saw it in the theaters. It was one of those things where I think I heard about it and then I don't know, for whatever reason, I didn't actively pursue it. So I think maybe I'm going to check this thing out now.
If it was released in the theaters, I do think it was like, like how we get special movies that are at the Cedar Lee. There tend to be more artsy releases. I think it would have gone that range if it was released in the theaters. I don't know. I didn't do any research onto the background of the release. I literally just finished watching it this morning. But I want to recommend it because it was something that totally was not on my radar. So I'm guessing I'm not alone there because I tend to stay pretty up to date on things that are coming out. And I was really surprised. I did not know a lot of his backstory, and it was really the documentary that I saw prior to this that interested me in pursuing it further, because I'm like, I kind of want to know more about this guy and his, I don't want to say two wives, because he wasn't married to the other one, but they all lived together. And when he passed on, his wife and this Olive, who they both fell in love with, she ended up living with the wife for 38 years till she died afterwards. So, they continued living together beyond, and both had children with Marston. So, there's everything I'm just telling you is, I guess, quote unquote, spoilery, but I'm just telling you that's the tip of the iceberg. There's a big story going on here. At a time where they were very brave, however you feel about that type of relationship's irrelevant. It's more of the bravery at that time to even attempt something like that is struck me as pretty awe-inspiring. Whether you morally are for it or not that's irrelevant. I just was like, wow, really at that time this was going on, because certainly today I think people are more open now, but certainly it would raise eyebrows. Back then it was kind of like. And the movie addresses this, you'd be kind of ostracized from this.
Yeah, I'd say today it'd still be tough. That life would still be a tough one to do, especially when you introduce children. Because whenever somebody has kids or there's children around, everybody immediately has this moral high ground or this defensive position or whatever you want to call it. People under the guise of we must protect the children will do a lot of stuff. And so when you introduce children into a mix, people really will get judgmental. People really will get protective. And to be honest, I'm not knocking anyone who's protective of children. I think that's admirable. If you put the needs of children over your own, that's great. But, you talk about just not only just this 3 consenting adults. Once you add these children into the mix, that'll have people really, throwing defensives up and going on the offensive. And I can only, I'm going with modern day sensibilities. I can only imagine, back then how hard and tough it was on them, how tough it probably was on the children. There was a lot of going on there. So that's something that really has me interested in this.
People use children a lot of times, and the movie addresses this as an excuse for bad behavior. And there's I'm not talking about Marston and his family. I'm talking about those that were around them. I don't want to say too much more other than to say that it was a very interesting look, because it's not just them living this alternate lifestyle that is the highlight of the film. It's Marston's philosophy. He was a professor, and these were things that a lot of this was a basis for things that he was studying. And the movie addresses what he was studying, what his wife was studying, the trouble his wife had being taken seriously. She was trying to get a degree at Harvard, and because she was a female, she had all the skills, and in some ways was considered to be, he invented the lie detector, but she made some of the pivotal research discoveries that enabled it to work, to understand how it worked. So it showed how much she was an equal partner, and in many ways maybe was, the eureka moment for the lie detector because of her own research that she had done. So it was really interesting to see then how this turned into an alternate lifestyle through their studies. And that led to Wonder Woman, and this was a philosophical piece in many ways, shape, or form. So it was just very interesting to see the background of this, because I think it's very different than you look at the backstories of Superman and Batman, which I'm always interested in the genesis of some of this, because these are characters that are still around today, and they have been very malleable over time. Wonder Woman in particular, though, has had kind of a roller coaster effect, where after Marston, they kind of watered down the character and even took away her powers at one point to try and, make her relevant in a different way. And it wasn't until, I think, the 70s that, she made her resurgence as far as having powers again, and they brought her back on that end. But it's been an interesting journey for that character in a way. I don't want to say parallels Batman. Batman, if you take a look at Batman, he's gone, he went from being like this very dark character in the beginning to being the 60s kind of pop sensation to, back to like a swashbuckling detective, back to the, darker version that we kind of see now of the character. And Superman's gone through his own kind of journey as well. It's just kind of interesting to see the long-term journeys of these characters. I found it incredibly interesting, and it's one that I'd recommend for anybody who's interested in his backstory. It really is the backstory of three people, and the movie portrays all three of them equally. So you get to know all three of them. And it is based on a true story, but based on the documentary I saw, the movie's pretty accurate. And I admit I haven't done a lot of research or reading books, but I actually would love to read a biography of him to know more of his backstory now, just because I find it fascinating. I'm like, wow, this is it's a very different story than what I was expecting as far as the creation of the character. I don't know, it's neat.
Cool.
Now, you and I both watched Lego Flash, and this was one that totally, I was home on a sick day, and I was fighting an upper respiratory thing, which I hate starting everything with that. But this was just kind of a fun romp. And I liked the Lego Batman movie a lot, and I've liked some of the other Lego Justice League releases that have come out. This was a surprise for me, because the Justice League's in it, and from a continuity standpoint, if you've been watching the other Lego movies, this is in that same Lego continuity. So there actually is a continuity to it. It's fun, it's accessible, not afraid to have a sense of humor. For DC fans, I think the nice wink and the nod is if you've been playing Lego games or if you've seen any of the Lego movies, you'll know that I don't want to say it's a bit Silver Agey in its approach, but it's definitely more family friendly. But there's jokes in there and satire relating to these characters that is a wink and a nod to the DC fans. And it's clearly the people that are creating these movies are fans of DC Comics. So it's not a spoof. It's just, they're fun and accessible. It's meant to be, for a wider range crowd. And I really enjoyed the Flash story being told here because of his speed and his quick movement, he's a character that the rest of the league's having trouble understanding. Many times they think that it's almost like he's erratic, so you can't always count on the Flash to be where you need him to be because he's trying to do so many things at once that he often I think the ongoing joke with Barry Allen for years was the fact that Barry shows up late everywhere, which is ironic because he's the Flash. But it's really, this movie, kind of highlights the fact that he is this kind of jumping bean. And yet it very much felt like this is still the forensic scientist and he's still doing these things. But it feels like a younger Flash who is kind of trying to find what his role and purpose is on the League as well. They have characters like the Atom. I think the Atom was one of the highlights of the whole thing as well. Just a really fun character to have, and there's cyborgs in there. The whole team, actually, Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, everyone you would expect that are the major players. But the main villain's the Reverse Flash, and it winds up really showing the Reverse Flash as a very powerful adversary. How these speedsters really could, if driven, take down the entire league if they were really to use the Speed Force to its potential. And this really shows the Speed Force. For all of the humor in it, there's some very serious topics exploring the scientific implications of the Speed Force that I thought was really compelling in this story.
Yeah, I tell you, I'm going to put this, for me, this was over Lego Batman, and I loved Lego Batman when it came out. I was laughing my head off throughout that, and just everything with the Robin, just the whole gambit that they ran in that movie with the evolution of Batman in that character from being I'm Batman to being having the Team Batman concept. But for me, this Lego Flash, I don't know why. For some reason, I enjoyed this one more, and I think part of it was because it was the Flash. It wasn't somebody that I was you're really expecting to have their own movie, and you see this character's growth, you see his development, you see, just the, kind of the growth within this movie. I was like, that was a really cool, just showing him learning to slow down and think things through, and his strategy that he had to trap Reverse Flash, and just, the various, every time when he was redoing, and I'm like, I was sitting there just, I don't know, I really got into this Lego movie. I'm not knocking Batman Lego, but for some reason this Flash movie was better for me.
You know what it was? I think it was a much more multi-layered story, because I think he had part of it is, and you're kind of alluding to it there. There's like this Groundhog Day part of it where the Flash keeps getting zapped through time, and he's trying to correct things as he's going through it. I geek out at movies with time travel where there's implications of traveling through time, trying to correct your mistakes as you go through and do that. And I love that the Justice League does not believe him, that the Reverse Flash is the one causing this, that there's even another Flash. They're blaming him. and his own. It's like they believe that his ineptitude during part of this he's using the Reverse Flash as an excuse for his ineptitude. And I love that through there was really a defining of what is a hero, and how even when the chips are down, you keep getting back up. The atom pieces I thought were fun. There was a lot of humor mixed in with it. It's what I love in animated features, when you have humor, but you have serious story elements that are driving the humor. So it's not just slapstick. And I think I'm with you on this one being the better of the two films, not because I dislike Lego Batman. I'm with you on that. But I think the story themes that were in this one I think it was a better story. I think the beginning, middle, and ending of this story was just a better story mixed in with the humor that I really liked from Lego Batman. So it's definitely, if you're somebody that only likes your comic book movies to be serious, this probably isn't going to be your cup of tea. But if you like movies like a lot of the recent Disney Pixar, or like the Minions movies and stuff like that, if you like that kind of humor mixed in with some really great stories, I think you're going to find something to like here. Because I think it's DreamWorks that does. I might be wrong on that one. Whoever does the Despicable Me movies, it's that kind of caliber where I felt like this was not a throwaway direct-to-DVD release. This was something that they took very seriously. And actually, in the end, I'm with you. I think they came up with a far more successful movie in this one, and I can't wait to see the next.
Yeah, I think, and I'm really glad you do mention that there is a good, solid story in this. And it's not just Flash's growth. The Atom got some really cool moments, again, with, just letting him actually have his a couple roles. It wasn't just the Trinity doing stuff. It was, Flash and Atom they let do some stuff. And this was a solid story, but it was also very fun. And I think that's absolutely wonderful. So I'm looking forward to the next Lego movie as well.
Have you seen Gotham by Gaslight? Did you get a chance to watch that?
Oh, God, yes, I did.
Now, did you read the original graphic novel?
Okay, here's the thing. I could have swore I read it. And I'm watching the movie going, I don't remember any of this. So then I'm looking through my books. I'm trying to find it. And I couldn't find a copy of it in my house. I'm like, did I read it? So now this is one of those books I think I borrowed, when I was in college from my buddy Hoach, and I read it, or maybe I didn't. Maybe I just knew of the plot, and this was post-college. So it's one of those things I don't remember I don't think I actually read it back in the day, but after watching the movie, I picked it up. I logged on, I picked it up, and I read it right then and there because I'm like, okay, I got to know what the heck happened in the original comic book. So I don't think I read it, or if I did, I completely forgot what Gotham, the original comic Gotham by Gaslight was. So in a way, this animated was truly my first introduction to the story.
Well, now, to validate some of what you're saying, they made changes to this compared to the original Gotham by Gaslight. They added in characters that were not there from the Batman universe. So, and so thematically, it's Gotham by Gaslight. It's Batman versus Jack the Ripper. What they did with this one, though, they expanded the cast to include, instead of Street Urchin A, the three Robins play a role in this.
Yeah, that was awesome.
And so there's a lot of characters that were not, and I don't remember the three Robins being in Gotham by Gaslight, the original story.
They weren't.
And I really liked the choices that they made in this to stick to the thematic tone. I felt like I was being transported to Victorian London and seeing Batman in Victorian London, which was what was great. Gotham by Gaslight was, if it wasn't the first, it was one of the first Elseworld books. And I remember reading that when I was in high school. That was my first exposure to that. We're going back to the 80s, because I believe that was I think that was a late 80s release, if I remember correctly. If it wasn't, it was early college. And I just was captivated by it. It was when Elseworlds was a very new thing for DC. And they were taking these characters and saying, hey, what if? And I was a big fan of Marvel's What If series. This was like taking it to another level, though, because there were these prestige format graphic novels that were extended stories. So you got this really high quality paper, that were really book covered. And it just was, Batman and Jack the Ripper. Who wouldn't? I mean, that's like a dream matchup, right? And this really, really delivered. The quality of these DC releases just continues. I saw this one, and I actually got caught up on some of them because I had two of them in the queue that I didn't realize I missed watching. I had Teen Titans Judas Contract and Justice League Dark that I had not watched. So I watched all of them and got caught up on them, and I can honestly recommend all three. Have you seen both of those, Judas Contract and Justice League Dark?
You know what? Actually, they're in my queue as well. I haven't had a chance to sit down and watch them.
So Judas Contract is, if you've seen any of the other Teen Titans ones involving Damian and his crew, what this does is it combines the Judas Contract story by Wolfman and Perez with the continuity that's been going on in the Teen Titans movies in the animated releases. So they go back they add like a history to that continuity with Dick Grayson being Robin and originally with the Titans, bring it into present day to the current time Titans with Damian and his crew, and involved, like an amalgamation of them. So we had the Dick Grayson and we had the Dick Grayson relationship with Corey was brought to life in this as well. Raven's in it, obviously, of course, Tara. But Blue Beetle's in this, which he wasn't in the original Judas Contract. So they've got characters that are in this that the past and modern day put together. I really liked the way that they did it. It was a wink and a nod to the original continuity. And the story is Judas Contract, so they play it out. But they bring in characters like Brother Blood along with Deathstroke to add a modern spin to it. And it's Deathstroke after what happened in the Batman storyline with Damian and Deathstroke. So they've got this movie continuity that's going on while delivering the classic story of Judas Contract in a continuity. I guess I appreciated the way that they organically were able to maintain the continuity that's been going on in the Batman films, the Teen Titans films, and bring in this classic story and tell it in a way that honors the original story. Because this really was the betrayal of Tara, everything that you expect that would come from Judas Contract. I do recommend for anybody who watches this, there is almost a half an hour documentary with Wolfman and Perez meeting up in present day to discuss Judas Contract. And they talk about, they lived like minutes from each other when they were originally creating this. And the two of them were talking what their working relationship was like, how they got on Titans, how they did not expect during the time, I guess, when Teen Titans came out. DC only had like books, any new book that was being created, the ones that weren't in the normal top tier, were lasting about 6 issues and being canceled. So they were having this kind of revolving door of new series that were coming out. So Wolfman and Perez jumped on Teen Titans and only expected it to last 6 issues. So they went into this thing figuring, well, let's just do what we want, because they're going to cancel us anyway. and it wound up, because of the fact that they kind of approached it with that artistic freedom, wound up having this hard-hitting, successful series that developed stories like Judas Contract and the relationship between them. In many ways that, they were underground the way X-Men was at the time. And that was why those two books were kind of paralleling each other between both Marvel and DC. So the documentary it's a conversation between Wolfman and Perez today. And they're face to face, sitting there together. Feels like you're hanging out with them at a table at a diner or something like that, as the two of them are having this like intimate discussion about it. So it's nice to be kind of a fly on the wall watching these two talk. So that's worth the price of admission as much as the great movie that comes along with it. But it's nice because I love Judas Contract. It's one of my short list, like so many others, favorite Teen Titans stories because of just how many twists and turns it had and how mature the story was. It captures all of that while maintaining this great animated continuity that they've got going on. Because I'm a big fan. I think the animated releases right now have been incredible. And they've got this, they keep alternating them between different lines, between the Batman, Teen Titans, Justice League, these different lines, and they've been intersecting them while maintaining this ongoing sense of character development and growth. And I've been very impressed by it. And I expected this to be a straight up Titan story that was disconnected from the continuity. I thought they were just going to flat out do Judas Contract as it was back in the day. If you had told me they were moving it into the continuity, I probably would have been less excited about it, because I would have been like, well, no, I just kind of want to see them do Judas Contract. Having seen it and not knowing that this is what they were doing, I was so surprised at how much I loved it, for the fact that it honored the story and completely delivered it from A to B and every element that I would expect, while at the same time incorporating these different characters in there. Blue Beetle's got this really cool storyline in it that I just really enjoyed throughout. And they did what I think the best Titan stories do so well. They spotlighted each character, showed why they're a family, showed that sometimes they can be a dysfunctional family, but like any family, when the chips are down, they come together and they're stronger because of it. This is one of those types of stories, and it just delivers a home run. If you haven't seen it, I cannot recommend this more highly. Don't let the fact that it takes place in the movie continuity shy you off and kind of go, are they shortchanging Judas Contract? Not in the slightest.
See, I'm starting to love when different mediums do this, where they take this classic story and they modify it. And that's a far cry from where I was years ago, where I would have been more like, no, it must follow the original story. There's a reason it's a classic, and I would have been one of those guys jumping up and screaming about that. But it's something about lately, these past couple of years, my sensibility and just my desire for, the story has changed. It's not just, I don't want it to follow the original. I wanted them to take the license with it. And it's, like that was part of the thing I loved about Gotham by Gaslight, because when I watched it, I was like, I couldn't remember anything about the story. Well, because there was some dramatic changes. And when I read the original comic right after watching the movie, I was like, you know what? I love this original comic, but this story that I got was great. I like the fact that they put in these other characters. And you're talking about with Judas Contract. I love the original Judas Contract. That was just an amazing, amazing story. And, now hearing about these little tweaks and changes, I'm salivating to see this movie. We're probably going to watch that, if not later today, I'm going to watch it tomorrow, just because I want to see these little nuances, and especially when you get a talented creator making making the changes. When you get somebody, you know, and they're doing this with these animated series where they're not just throwing something together. They're putting their time into it. They're putting their heart and soul into it. And you can see the creative forces behind it actually care about what they're creating. It's art to them, and you can see that artistry. And it's one of the things I'm loving about this animated universe, and I'm loving about this TV universe. I'm loving, you know, just what we're getting outside of just the regular comic. These are other universes, but they care just as much about them as our comic book creators care, and you're seeing it. I think that's something that, you know, you got to give credit to just the creative forces behind these things.
When you do an adaptation, as long as you understand it at its core and you get the core details right, then you can play around with it a bit because you've gotten that foundational piece. You've got to really build from the ground up, understanding, like, what is this story at the core? What is it that draws people to this story? What are the key elements? And they need to be a part of your outline. You got to go, okay, this has to happen. This has to happen. This has to happen. This has to happen. How you get there along the way can be altered as long as you get those core values there to the original story. So that was really the nice thing about this, was they understood Judas Contract as a story. They understood what they're doing in their current continuity with the team that they built. So I think what's nice about this is I really feel like it's Judas Contract for the old generation, you know, people like me who originally read the story, and then this new generation of maybe people who have only seen the animated releases, or maybe are a more recent Teen Titans reader. And, you know, this again is their first exposure to Judas Contract. I think it's very accessible to both audiences because I absolutely loved it. And I appreciate the fact that they put these little documentaries on as extras for the commentary piece. I just think it was really, really well put together. And there's a lot of fan service in there, and it's the right mix of that and stuff that I really like. I was, you know, mentioning Justice League Dark earlier, and that's an original story. Matt Ryan, who played Constantine in the TV series, is Constantine in this, which is nice because, you know, that show didn't survive, but he has. I mean, he's made guest appearances in Arrow. Now he's going to be going in Legends of Tomorrow. You know, he's one of these. I really was a fan of the show, and I was sad when it was canceled because I felt like there was a lot of potential in what was developed there, and I'm glad to see there seemed to be a fan outpouring of support, and it was heard, and they've managed to get him in guest appearances, and then in this animated release, and then, you know, getting him back on TV again. I think it's great, and I think he understands Constantine. You love Constantine and you hate Constantine at the same time for his actions, and I think you've got to have that yin and the yang with the character. And to see him teamed up with Batman and Zatanna and Swamp Thing and Black Orchid, and it's all the elements of the House of Mystery, and they bring in the villains that you expect, and then some that like are introduced to you in a way that you didn't expect. It is everything you expect about this really cool magic story. And Batman winds up being, and this is one of my favorite things, you're kind of Batman's running buddy in this because he's not the magic user, and magic is not the world that he's comfortable in. So, you know, in these, you have these I'm Batman moments where he is Batman, and you can tell he is having to be Batman in a way that is unique to this situation, which I think makes you respect Batman more because you know he's a fish out of water here. And they don't shy away from that. They embrace his strategic skills in such a way where you get to see him use every bit of his training in a way. And the relationship with Zatanna obviously is a key. Zatanna has some major screen time in this, and they really play off of the rich relationship between Constantine and Zatanna that we've been seeing in the comics so recently in this piece. And Swamp Thing is another key player in this. Everyone gets screen time. And I think that's one of the things I've enjoyed about all of these releases that we've talked about here is they bring in a lot of characters and manage to give everybody screen time in a way where you get to know all these characters if you don't know them. You get to know how they're being viewed in this world if you do. And it just winds up being very satisfying to see these characters brought to life and being treated, to your point, by creators who are fans, clearly fans of the types of storytelling that we're getting here. I hope this gets a sequel, because I know they're doing an animated Suicide Squad that's coming up, I believe this month. Is the next release is Suicide Squad. I don't remember if it's this month or next month, but I've got it pre-ordered. And I'm just glad to see more of these releases coming to light, because they've been so good.
Yeah, I got to start doing this pre-order stuff, because I usually find out about it after it comes out, and you go, "Hey, did you watch it?" I'm like, "Oh, dang it! Okay, let me jump on that."
I got behind on these, and it's not because of quality. It's just because we've talked about it on the show before. There's so much stuff out now. The Lego stuff, like, how did I miss that? I mean, Flash was just a recent release, but I caught it on a whim. And it was another one of those that came up recommended for you. And I'm like, I didn't even know this was a thing. I'm like, well, let me watch it. I hope it's good. And I walked in with low expectations, just figuring like, I don't know, this is probably some throwaway release, because it's not being released in the theater, which was kind of silly for me to think. It's totally, I'm with you. I think it's one of my favorite Lego releases yet out of them. So I don't know, just it was some good watching. But I'm anxious for Suicide Squad. I think these movies have just made me excited. You know what it is when I'm watching them is I've got a tread climber, and I've got to where my priorities have shifted. I've started making exercise and healthy eating a priority, because I'm not going on a table again anytime soon. I've made that my kind of determination. So I've been kind of rewarding myself by saving some of my favorite superhero stuff, or superhero things that I've been wanting to get to that I just haven't found time for. And I'm doing them when I'm on the tread climber. So I do like 45 minutes on that. So I'll start watching something on the tread climber, for 45 minutes, and then I'll continue watching it the next time. And it becomes an incentive to say, oh, let me go do, let me go do exercise because I can go see this. Because I'm watching them on my iPad and streaming them. And stuff's really good. It's just really, really good. So it's, I don't know, I've been excited for this. That's why I've seen a lot of these movies and things that I'm talking about here was in that end. And I think it's nice nowadays that we have so many options, either through physical or digital media to have access to these films and shows that we all love. But it's been good stuff. Krypton, I want to give a quick shout out to you. You haven't seen it yet, and I know you're gonna watch it. So I don't want to spoil anything for you. I really enjoyed the first episode. I didn't know what to expect from it. It takes place 200 years before Superman, I believe. So this isn't, I believe it's his great-great-grandfather, who is the main character in this. But Adam Strange makes an appearance, a couple appearances in the first episode, and kind of sets up the premise for how this links to modern day. And there's a major villain in the series that is very DC specific, but it shows the historic, and if you're a longtime fan of the Superman books, you'll figure out pretty quickly which villain would likely be tied to Kryptonian history, and how that could have a pivotal impact on Superman. So I really love it because you get to see cities like Kandor City, for example, in operation. And at a time where it was in operation actually on Krypton. Now, because of the fact they're going so far back, they can take some liberties. And obviously because of the fact that this is a story where time is being potentially messed with, that they have some freedom to really play around with it. But none of these are characters that are known. Superman's great-great-grandfather and great-great-great-great-grandfather, because they have, the family tree is in parts of this. Them being a part of this, but is something that's new. So it's fresh. My biggest worry for the series is the fact that you don't have the big DC character in it. I'm hoping that the tie to Superman is enough to get people interested to watch it. It's very sci-fi, and because it's Krypton, so they have a lot of tech that we don't have nowadays. Hover cars and different things like that are there. They definitely play into religion and the political climate of Krypton, which I've always found fascinating. So that very much is out of the comics. There's certain artifact elements that we read about in modern Superman books that their origins are being shown in this series, which I really like. So I hope this doesn't fall under the radar because it's on Sci-Fi and not like the CW where the rest of them are. I'm hoping this is not one of those series that gets lost. I really enjoyed the first episode. I wasn't blown away, but like any of the shows that have the potential to be a really great series, there's a lot of explanation in this one. You need a lot of getting to know characters because of the fact that they're all fresh and new. I liked the characters a lot. And there's relatives of characters like Zod and things like that are in there. So if you're a Superman geek, there's a lot to love as you're watching this and kind of going through, oh, that's where that came from. Oh, cool. They're going to have that kind of relationship in there. So the caste system of, people being put into different guilds and things like that is all a part of this. And you get to see more about how that, what honor means and what punishment is in their judicial system. It's very interesting because I feel like you're getting to know a planet and its climate, and there's a ton of potential for some interesting and unique storytelling there if it's given the chance to breathe and deliver. I liked it a lot, so this is not a knock on it. I think like any prologue chapter of a good series, it left me satisfied. It left me interested in more. I'm worried for it only because of the fact that I'm afraid it's going to fly under the radar. And it may not catch that larger audience base that it needs to, and I'm hoping I'm wrong on that. I'm hoping that this catches it because I liked it a lot, and I would certainly recommend it to anybody who's remotely interested in science fiction to watch it because it's very accessible. You don't need to know anything, but there's a lot of really cool geeky stuff in there for the Superman fan. So I'm curious to see when you get a chance to see it, what you think.
Yeah, well, in the trailers, they reveal who the villain is.
I don't know who's seen what trailers and things like that.
So
seeing as you haven't seen it, I didn't know what you'd seen.
I've seen the trailer, so I know who the villain is. Yeah. And
it's not as simple as that, though. It's not as simple as that. I'll tell you that. There's not one quote unquote villain in the story.
Well, because the one thing I did see in one of the trailers was that they took the Jeff Johns run and they took that version of that villain, and that's what they used as their basis for him. So,
and the first episode teases the villain, but does not show the villain or give you a real sense of that yet because there's no need. Because there's other villains afoot.
Yeah, this is one of those where I was trying every time I tried to see it, something was going on with me because I've had an absolute psycho week, and it's been one of those things where I was unable to sit down and watch it, and I'm like I gotta see. I know, and I've been running around like a madman. So this is something I really am, chomping at the bit to see, and I think because it is on Sci-Fi, I think it's. In a way, it's going to help it.
I hope so.
Because they're a little bit more lenient on ratings and things like that. Whereas if this was like on Channel 8, if this was on CBS or Fox or one of the big networks, they would not give it the sufficient time. But the Sci-Fi Channel, they say, hey, let's let this go. And they're more understanding because there's been a couple shows on there that have started off slow and has picked up, and they I think we got some there. Let's renew it. And, so I'm hoping that because it's on Sci-Fi, Krypton will get a good chance to get, because you got to tell if you're building, as you said, the society, the religion, just everything, the culture, you need a couple episodes really to get people, to sink their teeth into it, to know who is who and what's what.
And what it means to be a member of a house.
Yeah.
Those are pieces that are pretty critical. I really was surprised by this. And I enjoyed it. I wasn't, like I said, I wasn't blown away, but the episode isn't one, when you watch it, you'll see what I mean. That's not an insult. It's that prologue chapter. And it was a really good prologue chapter. I feel like if this keeps going with the momentum that first chapter had, this could wind up being like a dark horse series for me where I'm like, wow, one of my favorite shows is right now Krypton. And, I'm really,
cool.
I'm really hoping the potential of this series because I see a lot of potential in it. I'm hoping the potential pays off because I really liked the characters and I think the cast is great. I'm glad that I didn't feel that this is all about the main villain, that there's other villains in this. And there's other questions I have about certain characters and certain pieces of Kryptonian lore that are revealed that I'm like, okay, what's going on there? Cool. There was a lot of stuff in there that I felt was like, wow, they're really opening up some avenues because we don't know a lot about this. And I like that. I like that this is something we don't know a lot about. So it's some really interesting, I don't know, television programs to follow along with. And I'm just glad to see that this one's coming to light. And I hope it doesn't get lost. I hope what you said is true. I'm hoping that on Sci-Fi, I'm hoping that the issue isn't low viewership. I'm hoping that because it's on Sci-Fi, it may attract a different audience. And, rather than trying to spread out the current audience that's following comic book shows, I'm hoping it picks up some of the viewers of Sci-Fi who like the Sci-Fi Channel original programming, because it's right at home there. So I think there is the opportunity for this to be a jumping on point, maybe for some people who don't currently watch the CW lineup, and might give this a shot as a science fiction show. Because, you've got us, those of us that are hardcore, we're all going to watch it, and check it out. But you ultimately want a casual audience that's brought in that's different than us, because that's how a series survives. And I'm hoping that this gets that different casual crowd, maybe who hasn't touched those other series, and might make this one a shot. Because you don't need to watch anything else to watch this. It's its own entity, which I think is cool. So, good stuff.
Nothing like the handy-dandy electro claw for carving through metal doors.
Jim, our next discussion, we're going to talk about Aquaman number 34. It's called The Tyrant King. Dan Abnett is the writer, Kelly Jones on art, Michelle Madsen on colors, Steve Wan's letters, Andy Kubert and Alex Sinclair on the cover, Joshua Middleton, the variant cover, Andrea Shea is the assistant editor, Alex Antone is the editor, Brian Cunningham, the group editor, Aquaman, created by Paul Norris. This is one, you turned me on to this because I'd been behind on Aquaman. And you were saying, as we were talking through, what are some things we want to talk about in the next 2 episodes? And we already had on the slate that we're going to be talking about Nightwing and Milk Wars that are going to be coming up as part of these segments that we're doing. But we wanted to talk about something else, and Aquaman and Mera both came up from you. And we hadn't talked about this in so long that I was excited, but I was really behind. And wow, what a refreshing catch-up this was. I'm loving what's going on. In our first segment, we were kind of talking about Krypton and how it's got this political intrigue and stuff like that. Equally interesting when you explore in Atlantis, because we've got a Tyrant King right now, Wrath, who's taken over. And through that, we get to see kind of, this issue is one where it lays out the history of Atlantis, recent history, talking about what it was like when Wrath grows up and the different caste system, like what it's like for the working class. And it was really interesting to see this play out. I didn't realize until my second read through, I just was kind of enjoying the story. I'm like, I really enjoyed the art in this. I didn't realize it was Kelly Jones. Kelly Jones, who had done so much great work on Batman for years. And I really enjoyed the artistic choice for this, to see Kelly Jones doing this artwork, because I really am a fan of the art style. And I thought this was a great series, especially with the dark madness and the magic, I think, of this series. He was always great when he got into Batman stories that mixed with supernatural, and did some great work on Deadman as well. So it was right at home here. I thought this is really a good-looking book with a great story that gave us a background into the lead villain of this that I think I needed at this point. Because I want to know more about this guy, because I hate him already, but I want that piece of who was he? What is his motivation? What got him here? And to see his relationship with his dad and what dad was like, how he was at many times almost, I don't want to say dismissive of him, but you're right. There were points where he was cruel when the son got in the way of dad's productivity. Like, it was all about this A to B of his job, his day-to-day job, and his son was supposed to just follow along with that. And when there was any mistake that his son made that got in the way of their productivity, he was like scolded and almost shunned by Dad. And the complacency of Dad, like kind of being content with his life, was Dad was a hard worker. And there was things to admire about Dad's work ethic. But the son saying, I don't want a ceiling on me. I want to be something more. And I'm going to make people bow down to me in a way that they never would you. I'm not going to be restricted to this. I'm going to be something more. I loved the driving premise of this because you could see how this is something that festered in him from his childhood to not be locked into this role that he was handed down to him and to become something more. And you could get why that was a drive for him, but also led to his madness because that thirst for... I think there's a healthy element to not putting a ceiling on yourself and having ambition. But then there's a part where your ambition is to the point where you are willing to do anything and everything to achieve that goal, that you cross a line and you become something that is no longer rational. And this is an example of where you can sympathize with what led him to... which is always fun with a villain. You can sympathize with what led him to have the drive, but you can't sympathize with how far he will go to accomplish that. I really like the writing on this issue and really like this as a villain because he's new, at least to me, and I really have enjoyed the way this series has been crafted.
Well, they took a great build-up with him because he didn't just take over, and become the king of Atlantis. He was pretty much handed the throne because of political intrigue. He didn't, get the title by beating up Aquaman. He got it because the Atlantean Council said, we no longer want the half-surface dweller as our king. We want a pureblood. And it was a great story on how he actually took control and how he seized control. And then again, when you talk about he starts off with this dabbling of magic. They had that great crown of the crown of thorns that was blocking out all of Atlantis, from the world. And he put this up to protect his people. And and you see him he starts dabbling in the magic and going a little bit more and a little bit more. And the madness starts to grow. And the people who warned him saying, hey, there's a reason kings haven't dealt with this magic is because it's going to drive you insane, and it starts to drive him insane. And I love just throughout these issues, how you're slowly seeing the Mad King form and just how it wasn't just an overnight switch, I'm evil. He always had a darkness to him. He, tried to conquer Atlantis before and failed, and so there's always that darkness with him, but this is now taking it to a whole nother level, and you're seeing the various hierarchies that initially supported him now saying, we got a madman on the throne, maybe we got to get rid of him and get somebody else in there. And I love just seeing these different characters and these different layers and just the society that is Atlantis come out in these stories. This is something that I'm absolutely just thrilled with the ride. And like you, I was behind on this. I was way behind on Aquaman. And I read the Mera piece, and I'm like, wow. So then I went back, and I'm like, then I started looking at Aquaman saying, wow, I'm really far behind on this. Let me jump into this. So I had just a lengthy blitz of Aquaman reading that I did, issue after issue after issue, and it was just, I was going, and as the more I'm reading, going, oh, this is awesome, and I'm like, why did I not keep up on this? And it was a weird thing for me just to know that I'm so pumped and so excited that as Aquaman's coming out, I'm grabbing it immediately and reading it. But there was this period where I didn't read. I had the stockpile of reading to do, and I'm so glad I did, just because this is the Aquaman story is giving us cool action, cool superhero moments, a great villain, but then you have the intrigue stories, and then you have the personal issues between Aquaman and Mera, and Aquaman and some of the people of Atlantis, some who like him, some who don't, some who are tolerating him. It's a really cool, just a blend of character and superhero drama.
Well, imagine finding out that you aren't human. and you've lived your life raised as a human, and then, you're not only a part of this other world, but you are the king to be of this other world. And, you're the rightful heir to the throne. How do you shift from, giving up everything on the surface world that we all know and love, become a part of this underwater kingdom and make that your priority? It's very interesting the way that the story plays out, because I like that part. And they refer to him as the Aquaman and everything. And, they think he's dead. I mean, there's a lot of stories going on about what's happened to him. A lot of people think he's dead. People think this is the ghost of him. Some people think this is a pretender. And you can see why these rumors would be started. In some cases, the rumors benefit Wrath, where, people not necessarily believing that this is, in fact, Aquaman, I think is obviously to his benefit. His wanting to kill this pretender makes a lot of sense, because Aquaman as a symbol is leading this uprising, and he's making unlikely allies where there are people who normally would not side with the crown that are, and they're a powerful force. This is something. It's a series for people that are watching shows like Game of Thrones and stuff like that, and like the political intrigue of different caste systems, and people who are disenfranchised and things like that, kind of banding together to fight an overwhelming power. This has all of those elements, and I really love that about this. And please don't get me wrong what I'm saying. I'm not saying that this is Game of Thrones. What I mean, though, is it has a lot of the storytelling depth that I'm really enjoying about that show. And I don't know. I think Abbott's known for writing this kind of quality of work, and it's really coming to fruition. And like you, I read Mera first, actually, because Mera came out, and you had mentioned that it was good. So I'm like, well, I don't know, Jim to mention Aquaman. I knew you were a big fan of from, Blackest Night and stuff like that. And when you were saying, hey, this is a thumbs up, I'm like, I haven't read any Aquaman in a while. I'm really behind. This is a good jumping on point. So I read the Mera issue first, and I'm like, okay, this is way cool, but how did we get here? And I started reading the Aquaman issues to get caught up to how in fact, we got here. And wow, what a satisfying book that is. The nice part was, though, the Mera story, for those of you that are like, I haven't been reading Aquaman, I don't know where to jump on, I would start with the first issue of that Mera miniseries, because I feel it gives you everything you need to know. And I feel like if you're like, I just can't afford to go back time-wise or financially to read everything Aquaman, I think the Mera one can bring you up to speed, and you can grab the last couple issues of Aquaman and catch yourself up, if that makes sense. So don't feel like if you're like, can I jump into Aquaman right now? Yeah, you can. I think issue 34, honestly, it lets you know everything you need to know about the villain. I think the issue of Mera lets you know the current status quo. So you can jump in mid-story if you're like, I don't know if I want to invest, or if I have the time or money to invest. I would easily say Mera 1 and Aquaman number 34. Yes, you're going to have some gaps, but they're filling you in along the way in the story. And I don't know, I grew up jumping into books, like this. So I just happened to have the issues, so being able to go back was a luxury. But I'm going to be honest, I'm glad I read them because they're really good. But do you need to? No, I think there's an accessibility to being able to jump on this. They give you everything in that Mera issue. I think that Mera miniseries, they had an idea that like this might be, if somebody's a Mera fan, this might be their first issue reading into this. So let's give them enough that they can enjoy this miniseries independent of what's going on, even though there's big events surrounding it. And I don't know if you think I'm right on this.
No, 100%. As you're talking, I'm nodding my head because, again, Aquaman just, lapsed because I was reading a lot of different stuff. The Mera came out. I'm like, let me jump on that. And 100% completely in groove with the story. And it actually excited me to read Aquaman. And that's why I went back and I was able to go back and read, and get completely caught up. But to be honest, you don't need to. You could just read Mera and, you'll get plenty of the story and you'll get a great story out of it because they do a really good job with her. And it's funny because you're talking Game of Thrones and I completely agreed with what you were saying because I'm now getting into Game of Thrones. I just recently tweaked my cable packages, and I now have HBO. So I'm going back and I'm watching all of the old Game of Thrones, and I'm slowly coming to, getting caught up to, to the series. And I immediately started calling him the Mad King. And it was basically just because of the Mad King from Game of Thrones. So there is a lot of that political kind of royal intrigue going on, so, and it's not the same thing as what you're seeing on one, in the other, but it's that same kind of groove, that same kind of vibe. It's, and I think that for me, and even going into Mera stuff, because Mera always has that really cool heroic moment, but she also has that nobility to her. And then she's the quote unquote fish out of water, where she is the Atlantean dealing with humans. And I always loved her interaction and her dealing with that. And then, in Aquaman, they're doing a really great balance of because Arthur's main issue that his people have with him is the fact that he wants to have peace and harmony between Atlantis and the surface. And the Atlantean Council took that as weakness, and with the Mad King really pushing his agenda, saying, hey, that's weak. He's made Atlantis look weak to humans. He bowed and kneeled to their president, and it was some really cool stuff they did with just what should a king be, what should a king do, and that's something that they've been going through in Aquaman. That's something they're doing in the Mera story. This is a character these are characters that they really have a good chance to show the difference between a separate culture and what we normally deal with. The difference between royalty versus our elected officials. And I love that they do this great balance where they're showing the pluses and the minuses of the society, and they're showing just the different levels and the layers of these people. And I'm actually really just the cultural exploration they've been doing in Aquaman, especially the most recent stuff they're doing with with Arthur no longer being king, and faking his death and just acting as the imposter, the Aquaman, for part of the uprising. It's a really cool intrigue they're doing.
The one thing I really love about this is Wrath gained power because of the fact that some people, opportunists behind the scenes, banded together for the purpose of dethroning Arthur. And they really wanted, they knew what was best for their people, and this half-breed is not the one that is. And so Merc and Ursel and these people all banded together. But what's happening now is they did it once, and when you see the Mad King on the throne, and you're like, okay, we made a mistake, opportunists, once they've been successful, will follow through again. They're now turning on him, and he's seeing it happening. He's watching it happening around him. And people he thought he could count on that were his inner circle, he's seeing that crumble. So because of that, he's recognizing, I'm in power now. I have the power. I can't be content with the power I have. I need to gain more. I need to go to the places that our rulers have not gone to for centuries. Going deep into Atlantis' dark history, to start looking at Atlantis had a dark period where demons and creatures and things like that and magic was something that ruled and increased the madness that you were talking about earlier. He's like, I want to tap into that kind of power. I don't want people to have a choice whether or not they're going to bow to me. They are just going to bow to me because that's what the power demands. He makes alliances going to his childhood friend. And here's the moral of this story. If you are Wrath's childhood friend, you want to break with thee immediately and no longer be his friend, because that friendship will certainly not turn out the way that you're expecting. Because the two of them are it's like buddy cop for half of this issue, where it's like all of a sudden this random friend from his childhood is this, kind of wicked, I guess, outcast who has powerful magic. And Wrath's like, this is the kind of person that I need because I can rely on his drive and what he needs. And he's dangerous. And I need somebody dangerous right now. Well, the second he gains power, he shakes hands with his childhood buddy, and the childhood buddy turns into this fish-like creature who's subservient to him, and he's kind of like, well, thank you for bowing to me now. And I'm like sitting here like, what just happened here? It's like, no, not even a tear of remorse for his childhood buddy who, like, he went on this journey with, like, the two of them were simpatico all the way through. Both of them wanted the same thing. They wanted to be leaders. They wanted people to respect them and all that. It's kind of like, nah, you're still like, now I think his buddy's more lowly than he was before, and he could care less because he got what he wanted. And that's the thing about a mad opportunist. They will cut the legs off of even their closest allies to accomplish their goals. And it's why his inner circle's actually right to want to derail him right now, because they see the writing on the wall that they aren't long for this world if they stay with him.
Well, here's the thing. It's interesting because, and this is one of the things I really loved about this, was because Arthur was so forgiving to his enemies. And that's basically why this whole thing came about. This guy's not forgiving, or, and they learned quickly that, throughout, once he got to power, they're like, hey, if we even start to try to overthrow him, he's going to kill us, and they really, and it was a really cool just how, immediately the people who supported him realized, we messed up.
Yeah. Let's
get rid of him. Wait, we're too late. And now they have to support the resistance, and they have to actually start backing the rebellion. And I loved seeing that realization that these characters had, who thought they knew what was best for Atlantis. Okay, we were wrong. I want to see, and that's the part I want to see where this goes, right. Because there are still some of them who don't think Arthur is the right choice. And Mera is starting to get the nod from a lot of people that she's more pure Atlantean, but she's not psychotic. So she's starting now. We're now starting to shift from the king to who will be the queen. And I loved how the fact that they're doing that little shifting in society. But one of the characters you mentioned, and I got to talk about him, is Merc, the loyal, Atlantean guard, and when Arthur was getting dethroned, he and Arthur had those they started becoming friends, but you know what? He had his honor. He's like, I'm not loyal to the king. I'm loyal to Atlantis. I'm loyal to here. And so when Arthur no longer was king, he had to double cross him. And I used air quotes around the double cross because that for me was the coolest moment, because, in the story, Merc's the one who runs him through, and like Merc's the one who killed him. And oh my God, he killed him, And later you see Arthur's not dead, and then when somebody questions Merc about it, that person gets killed. So Merc is he part of the resistance? Is he recognizing that Arthur? Where is his role kind of going to play in this? In the end, what happens to him? He's a character that, over the story arcs with him, he's grown. And I'm like, man, yes. I'm liking this guy. And he's even started, before all this craziness started happening, he started accepting Atlantis and surface relations, and he started looking at the surface not as something that should be avoided, but as a potential. He started seeing the potential good that the relationship with the surface would have. So when all this stuff started happening, he kind of looked like he did a flip-flop, but no, he didn't really. So he's one of those characters that throughout these final battles, I'm going to be curious to see how he steps up, how he, what roles he plays in this. So there's so many these characters that they've taken their time to develop, and I'm like, man, okay, yeah, I want this. I want to see this.
Yeah, and Merc's one of those characters that you're right. I don't think it's cut and dry what Merc's role is going to be in this. And I love that. I love that kind of stuff when you see a story like this and you're not really quite sure how it's going to play out. This is just one of the better developed series as it's continued on. And this is what I've always loved about Aquaman as a series. This goes all the way, for me, the Peter David run, as I've mentioned on the show before, was like my first real entry point. I was a big Peter David fan. I'm like, he's doing Aquaman. I've never really read the character. And he did the Atlantis Chronicles, and then did just a really great lengthy run. And I've read everything afterwards of Aquaman. and just grown to really love the character. And it's this kind of storytelling that really has made me a big Aquaman fan. It's you have the opportunity with how vast the ocean is to develop a really unique world with a unique political system. Everything, I mentioned earlier, everything we talked about with Krypton that I really liked about that show is what I'm really loving about Aquaman. This is a character, I can't wait to see when this comes to the big screen, what Aquaman's going to be like. If they nail this, it's going to be a must-see movie. And I'm everything I'm hearing about the movie has me hopeful that they understand this. Because I love the character's appearance in Justice League. I just want to see it morph into this kind of thing.
Yeah.
This and you can do that gradually. It doesn't have to be right away in the beginning. This book's so good because it gradually got here. And I'm hoping that the movie does that. And I'm hoping, like Wonder Woman, they nail it. Because wouldn't it be great if the success of the DC films comes from some of these other characters being like DC's Guardians of the Galaxy, where people are starting to get, and Black Panther, where there's a lot of these characters that are your Aquaman. While he's well known, his story, other than the fact that he quote unquote talks to fish, he's lesser known. Wonder Woman, the same thing. People know the magic lasso and stuff like that, but they don't know a lot about her history. So, these are characters who there's room to really, get people excited about them on the big screen. So I'm hoping Aquaman incorporates a lot of this stuff. The other moral of this story is if you have a name like Cadaver, change it immediately. It's probably not a good idea to I don't care if somebody shortens it to Cad. You really want to change it to something like Tim or Johnny or something like that is non-threatening. Because if you have a name like Cadaver that kind of spells out where you're going, and I honestly, I loved every bit of this. That was some great artwork too. When Cadaver's change happened, I really loved the look of that. I had never seen Kelly Jones. I don't know that I've never seen it, but it's been a long time since I've seen Kelly Jones do anything underwater. If he has, I'm sure he has. I've read a lot of Kelly Jones. I just found this to be a really great use of the Kelly Jones artwork and was really just enjoying seeing this artist stretching legs again and doing something on this series, because this is really just a beautiful, beautiful book and a great story.
Yeah, and to go along with that, because I completely agree with you. Issue 34, the ending of the issue 34 had some amazing just artwork, and this was some really cool color palettes with they kept it very dark and creepy, and then they had these flashes of energy, and it was some beautiful stuff. But throughout this Aquaman series, we've been getting some great artwork, yes. And just like some of the combat sequences that we had with Arthur, because he was using the fish, and again, the joke of him talking to fish, but he used a school of fish to mask his presence as he moved into the fight. And it was a really cool, and I don't remember which issue it was in, and I wish I could throw it out immediately, but it was this cool, usage of the artwork. It was a couple panels, through a couple pages where this school of fish kind of swoop in, and then you get a punch right from it. And, and the fish part, and he's right there and he's throwing down. And they were using a lot of stuff like that with, especially anytime they accessed and started tapping into the magic with the color palette. They started tweaking, and giving you some creepy red with, the general just creepiness, but they had some nice red palette accents that they were doing. So it's not just, because when, with this, yes, I agree, with the artwork, but it's the full art team that is doing some awesome stuff on this book. So it's not just a cool story we're getting. Visually, you are getting treated as well. That's I think one of the things with me and this book is you're seeing a really good team come together with the art and story and whatnot. And so we got to give full credit for a full team on this one.
Let's talk a little bit about Mera's miniseries. So it's a 6-issue miniseries, and the first issue was subtitled A Queen in Exile. Dan Abnett's the writer. Lan Medina is on pencils, and sorry for any name butchery there. Richard Friend on inks. Veronica Gandini on colors. Simon Boland on lettering. Nicola Scott and Romulo Farajo on the cover. Sorry for any. It's Fajardo on the cover. Stanley Archermlau on the variant cover. Andrea Shea, Brittany Holzer. I'm sorry, Andrea Shea is the assistant editor. Brittany Holzer is the associate editor. Alex Antone is the editor. Brian Cunningham is the group editor. Superman, created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster by special arrangement with the Jerry Siegel family. And as I'm looking, actually, why was Superman credited? Was Superman a big part of the Mera issue that I'm missing that piece? I don't know.
I think he's mentioned.
Yeah.
I honestly think he really...
Is that really the reason
really
why?
mentioned.
I'm all for that, but I'm like, wouldn't we also give like credit for who created Mera? It seems a little strange. I mean, like the title is Mera. Mera Queen of Atlantis is the name of the 6-issue miniseries. One thing I loved about this is it wasn't just about Mera; it was also about Ocean Master. And you see where this is heading. That Ocean Master has. Imagine you're on the flip side of it, because we always talk about Aquaman being, kind of the surface dweller who, is a fish out of water when it comes to Atlantis and trying to struggle with reconciling his dual roles. Well, now we got the Ocean Master who, through events in his life, have led him to seek a quieter life in Louisiana. So he's on Holly Beach in Louisiana. He's living with a family. There's a child. There's a woman. He's become the father figure in this family and loves it. And he's shocked that he loves it. And the longer that he's there, the more he's finding that he's not missing the life that he left. But there's still that drive inside him that's there. And I love that, because you're kind of seeing the reverse of what Aquaman went through. This is a guy who is an ocean dweller who is becoming a surface dweller and is very torn over his perceived ambition, his perceived responsibilities and ambitions to Atlantis and the underwater world. So, he's hearing what's going on with Atlantis from the outside, struggling with, I'm happy. Do I continue down this path or do I go back? And I love that being a major part of this issue. I didn't see that because I saw it mainly being focused on Mera's current predicament of, clearly Mera is going to be the leader of choice for Atlantis, but she got hurt. And when she got hurt, a spell was cast on her that keeps her from breathing underwater. So she has to be on the surface right now while she's recuperating. This is a temporary condition, but she can't go back down. She can't be there with Aquaman at his side. She can't be part of the fight. Their relationship's in kind of a weird place right now. They love each other deeply, but they're both conflicted over responsibility of, he's at the point where he's like, I want to marry you. I want to move on together. We are, the future together. And she's seeing more and more the responsibility of Queen, being the one that has to become Queen, that has to write things. They aren't normal people. And they're trying to be normal in a world where they can't be normal. I'm very worried about where their story's going, just because I want to see the two of them married. I want to see the two of them together. And is this world going to let them be together or not? You root for them to somehow make that happen. But I do see him sacrificing that for his love of the Queen. And I just love this story. I'm loving where this story is going because of it. It's such a great series and miniseries. This miniseries is a great companion piece because there are some solid stories with Ocean Master and Mera going on here. And Tula, we've got Tula who's been living on the surface, also being a part of all this. That I'm really enjoying the fact that this miniseries is allowing us to see characters who are not being spotlighted in the main title right now and fleshing them out. And I think this is what you need to do with a miniseries. Give us the stories that you can't tell in that, because we're getting to what you said earlier, a nice miniseries that's clearly setting up a beginning, middle, and ending of its own that is happening parallel to what's going on in the Aquaman book right now. So if you jump on Mera, you're going to get a good story right here in Mera and really enjoy it. And you're going to find out what's happening in Aquaman parallel to this. And
Superman is in the issue. He's like on 5 pages, and it's when Mera summons the Justice League because of the one villain of Eel that she had to deal with when the issue opens. And it's neat because he's actually part of, they used, because Superman and Wonder Woman show up to take the prisoner, to deal with it because he's got, aqua kinetic powers. And that's where you actually are brought to speed on what's going on in Atlantis, because Mera is explaining it to Clark and Diana, what's going on with the Crown, what's going on with Arthur. That's also where she lets them in on the fact that she's hurt and she's recovering, or actually Tula lets them in on that. So it is kind of neat that we laughed about, why did they put Superman?
No, I knew
he's in there.
Well, so is Wonder Woman, though. I want to know what that relationship is, that they've got to plop that. Here's the thing. I'm all for the original creators getting credit, so please don't take this as me making light of that. But, okay, 5 pages. The story's a Mera story. I'm glad they're giving credit for Superman, but I would have much rather seen cover credits to who created Mera.
Yeah.
Let's shout out that person. Or people. I don't know. I don't know Mera's actual, I don't know if that was Paul Norris or, where that character was originally created. I'm assuming Paul Norris, but I don't know. I don't know who originally created Mera. I'd love to know that from it. Why Superman and why not Wonder Woman? If you're going to do that.
Because of the Siegel family.
I would love to know what that's. Listen, I'm glad that, and it's funny, I say this and it sounds like I'm being critical. I'm really not. I feel like if you're heading in this direction, it would be nice for the title character of the story. I'm not saying in place of, in addition to. Like, why not put all 3? Put Mera, put Superman. Wonder Woman got equal screen time. Why not Wonder Woman too? I don't know. Or, just kind of a... I think it's nice. I actually am all for it. So it's not really a criticism. It was more of a why not Mera too? Is more of what I'm asking. It wasn't that I want that removed. It's more of that I would like the Mera credit in addition to it. And the Wonder Woman one. Why not? It wouldn't take that. How much space would it take to put that there?
And they should, but here's the I think the whole thing based on is the fact that the deal that the Siegel family did with DC.
Sure.
And it's in their I'm pretty sure in their contract it says he makes an appearance, you've got to put this in there. And there's any appearance by him. I think they have it flat out written, because even in all the movies now, in the animated stuff, there's always that Superman created by by special arrangement with the Siegel fan, and they have it on lockdown now, and so that's why. Now I agree with you that I'm curious as to who created Mera and where she came from, and that's something that when we're done talking, I'm probably going to look it up and verify it. But again, it was a neat use. Going back to the story, I liked how they used the Justice League, how they used Clark and Diana to give us the backstory on Mera. And it didn't take away, because the book starts right off with her in this fight sequence where she barely beats this guy, and she should have wiped the floor with him, but she can't breathe underwater. Her alkakinetic powers are limited. She got really messed up when she had to basically flee Atlantis and all that. So, and that was a cool story. But again, you learn that she got hurt bad. Now she's dealing with her life on the surface. And I like the fact that we have this exiled queen, for all practical purposes, who's now dealing with the State Department, who's now dealing with these problems. And then you add Ocean Master onto how's he going to play into this? I thought this, again, was a really cool action story, good story, and another political drama that is unfolding in a different part of the world. The Aquaman current storyline going on and the Mera story, it really does work well together. And I'm happy that because this got me back to getting caught up on Aquaman, and I'm glad that this story and that story are so linked with each other and so synchronized.
I agree. And I really felt like the Mera story, that's why I said, I think from an accessibility standpoint, if you're like on a budget and you're like, I want to jump on Aquaman, but I can't afford to go back, I think you're really safe grabbing the Mera issue first, and if you love that, grab Aquaman 34. Just understanding that you're going to have to fill in some of the blanks from the information you get from the Mera issue. 'Cause I think the Mera issue gives you kind of a, this is where we're at. Through Aquaman number 34, you get to know the villain, and you can kind of just jump in and kind of understand there's a resistance going right now that is in the middle of a fight with this tyrant king. There's factions at work, and it's a fun story. So it's one you can jump in. It's like jumping in partway through a television series. And I don't know, this happened to me with comics growing up all the time, and I guess my message here is I wouldn't avoid reading Aquaman now if you're like, I don't know, it's 34 issues in, I haven't been reading the book. I'd grab the Mera miniseries and grab issue number 34 and see if it's your cup of tea. And I would read Mera first, because I think Mera lays out for you where we're at, and issue number 34 kind of gives you a heads up on who the villain is, and puts you in a place where it's the next act in the war is going to be occurring. And I think that issue number 34 is setting up the next act. So you're in a place where you can kind of jump in and be a part of what goes on next in the book. So it's interesting. I don't normally recommend for people to jump on midway through a story, but I'm well aware of, there's a lot of competition out there for comic budget, and I would not let that keep you away from a good book.
Yeah, and it tell you, it's the with the Mera story, because we did talk a little bit, but I really just want to say how much I'm very excited for Ocean Master. And he's a character that in the past I really wasn't. I was like, I don't know. But seeing him, for some reason, just seeing him have this comfortable relationship with surface people, to the point where he's excited that the little boy is calling him dad, and he's happy about that. I want to see this person back in Atlantis, because for me, I think this could be the answer to Arthur and Mera's problems. If he were to return to the throne, Arthur and Mera would be free, because their whole thing is neither one of them, if one of them's king or one of them's queen, the other can't be their consort for some reason. Whereas if they were both free from the crown, they could be together. And I'm wondering if that's going to be kind of a way to handle it, where we have this pure-blooded Atlantean who now has this relationship with the surface. And this could be the basis of Atlantis surface dweller relations, or this could all blow up in everybody's face and it could really turn nasty. I don't know where they're going to go with this, and I think he's going to be a crucial part, and I'm glad he's in the Mera story, because I want to see him go from the Mera story into the Aquaman story.
I agree. It's a nice setup, and I can't wait for that too. It's a great book.
There they are, all alone except for that old character.
I would like to remind everyone about our show website. It's ragingbullets.com. That's where you're going to find out news about when the episodes are being released. It goes into Twitter and goes to our Facebook fan page. Besides those two places, we also have a wonderful Facebook group community, and we're a part of it. It's really run by the inmates who run the asylum over there. Such a great place to go to find out all kinds of news of what's going on, not just at DC, but around comics and television and games and everything. It's just a safe, fun place to talk about the things that you love. So I just want to shout out that community. We are also on Google+. I'm on the PlayStation Network, and so is Jim. It's raging_bullets for me. And Jim, you are sensei_whatnot. So you can connect with us on the PlayStation Network, and we'd love to game with you. I do have a Nintendo Switch, so if you want to do that, send ragingbullets@gmail.com an email, and I'd be happy to add you onto my friends list on the Nintendo Switch as well. Our show voicemail line is 1-440-388-4434 or drnorge on Skype. It's always in the show notes, and we love having you part of the show. If you prefer to send it an email, it's ragingbullets@gmail.com, and we'd love to have your thoughts and content added to our podcast. Jim, sponsoring this episode is DCB Service and InStockTrades.com. What's going on over at DCBService.com?
Well, they always have their bundles, 50% off bundles, 45% off bundles, varying covers, but also 50% off Wonder Woman, Conan, hardcover, written by Gail Simone, art by Aaron Lopresti, only $12.49.
Jack Kirby rocks my world. And if you go over to InStockTrades.com now, you can order Jack Kirby's Fourth World Omnibus hardcover. This is a 1,536-page gem that is full of Kirby goodness. $150 regularly. 42% off, only $87. And I say only $87, that's 1,536 pages. That is a tome. I am going to own this. Thank you, DCB Service and InStockTrades.com for continuing to support our show. I do want to remind you that they are a digital partner. If you go to DCBService.com, log into your account, link your account to My Digital Comics or Comixology, shop through their portals. It doesn't cost you anything more, but you earn 5% of those purchases towards your DCB service order. So thank you to those companies for supporting our show. Quick reminder about the Kickstarter for Staunch Ambition, issue number 3, a supernatural science fiction tale. And remember again that this is, as mankind continues to advance in scientific knowledge, breakthroughs compound exponentially. What happens when mankind is able to transcend their physical limitations? The natural becomes supernatural. Welcome to the new enlightenment. We, in episode 491, talked about this amazing series, issue 0 and 1. We're going to be talking next week about issue number 2 in depth with creator Brian Lau. Please consider supporting this Kickstarter. There are links into the show notes and our website. We are proud to be supporting this work. So, Jim, our next episode is going to be talking to Brian Lau about Staunch Ambition. We're also going to talk about Nightwing and Milk Wars. So we will see you then.
Bye!
Strategery. What is that supposed to mean? That's a word that I have never seen. Do you exist? Strategery. Suddenly, I don't feel as smart as I used to be. I couldn't find it in a dictionary. Oh, what the heck is strategery? Why I need to know, I don't know, it's just my way. I asked a friend I know and they told me go away. Strategery. Maybe it's something that is wrong with me. I may need a pill from the pharmacy. Maybe that will cure my strategery. Why I need to know, I don't know, it's just my way. Just because I don't know, I'll just say it anyway. Strategery. A definition isn't meant to be, or at least one that I can see. I'm so confused. Strategery.